folks. I thought I'd walk you guys kind of through a project from start to finish. So what you see here is a cutoff of curly maple. I've built a few guitars and resawed some curly maple, and this is one of those resaws. Normally you have two to make the book match for the top of the guitar. In this case, this is just one that didn't turn out. I've got two of these, and I've got some of these coasters here that I've made previously. You see it's got a little lamp engraved in it. Cut it out, a little verse on there, and I'm cutting these out for a family member to give out for Christmas. And so the problem that I had with this walnut is I have a bunch of walnut that my grandfather actually dried years and years ago, and it's 3/4 stuff. And the deal with this is I have to really waste a lot of wood to get this coaster out of it. And I did try what I did was I cut coasters on each side of a board, and the outside 1/4 inch down, and then tried to resaw it down the middle and plane it. Well, the resaw bandsaw blade on it or something's getting really dull, and I just couldn't get it to cut straight, so that didn't work very good. So now what I'm doing, since I had a couple of these, I thought, well, shoot, I'll use these. And so the first thing you can see is there's all these screws in here, and they're all way past depth. See that? That's really important because I want my material to be down good, to be held down really well. Because what I'm going to end up, and also what I'm going to end up doing is basically running a linear pocket, a big huge square pocket that just flattens this out perfectly to the spindle of the machine. And that's really important because, to be honest with you, these coasters are the hardest project I've done on here, because these letters right here are tiny and they're done as a little V-bit. Well, it's the carve feature in EstlCam, and the deal is, if you don't have that perfectly flat pocket or plane, and you don't have everything set right, that depth is hard to get right because they're so small. Any little change, any little discrepancy, it doesn't come out right. The letters don't look good, or they go a little bit too deep, or whatever. So you have to, in this case, you have to pocket or have to flatten your material out with the machine so that it's in perfect plane. I mean, even if you have a plain board or even a jointed board, because this spoiler board is not perfect or whatever, you still need to face it with the spindle in this case because those letters are so sensitive to depth. So anyway, so we'll move on here. So luckily I had some of these to kind of go by when I was laying out my program. And so basically all I did was I just laid them out here by eye, got them really close to where I wanted, like such, whatever, drew around them, and then put screws, in all the spaces that the coasters are not going to be cut out of. Like I said, those are screwed way down in the material because I'm going to pocket, maybe 30 thousandths off of that, so that should be totally fine. Okay, so yeah, you can see I just took center marks of these, took distance from here to here. This is I took a square and to this edge and marked this line up here, measured between these two lines, and then measured between that line and that center. And so that gives me my layout basically. So let's see here. You can see here, see this little dot right here? One of those, and I'm not even sure which one. One of those is my home position because it has changed slightly in position, but one of those is my home. So you can see that the board's pretty close to in line with it this way, but I have set it off this way. And so I'll show you how I kind of draw that up and figure it out. So on this sort of thing with like letters and like artsy stuff, I use Inkscape, and I've used Inkscape a lot for a lot of other things. So let me try to explain what's going on here. And okay, so you see this main let's see. this right here, the main outside square, that is basically, that's not my stock. That's not the wood that's here, but it's to my 0 points on X and Y to the height of my stock. I hope that makes sense. So basically, you're looking at, here, I'll show you. So basically, we're talking about from here, this line that goes across here imaginarily, to the top of the board here. And then basically I took this measurement from this line to this edge here, and that's where you get this line, this second line there. Well, so that creates my stock. That second line there to that top line is my stock. Okay? And so both the little lines below the top line and above the bottom line, that's my allowance that I want, clearance allowance to that edge. Okay? So basically, I already had this drawn out. I already have everything figured out. That's a whole nother deal, how to get images into something, to a drawing you can actually use the CNC, but that's a whole nother deal. And so basically, I don't know if you can see it, but I've used guides. I set this one by measuring physically, an inch over here, getting it right up against that 3/8 tolerance that I have set in, and then building it from here. So you can see I've used a guide to center that one, and then I just basically took a line from here to here, and used my guide, centered that one, set that one, and then from here over to the center, and then down, and that's how I get my distances apart. Now you could do this a lot of different ways. You could just do it in EstlCam, which really would be a lot faster and easier, but honestly, I like it like this, just because I can actually see what's going on and I can make changes easier. I hope that makes sense. With the EstlCam, it's very good at what it does, but it's pretty limited on as far as editing a drawing. So I kind of like to do this sometimes. And so now, basically what I'll do is I'll just get rid of all these lines. And like I said, I just use, actually draw lines as my guides. And this, the new version of Inkscape has done a really good job of these snap features over here. And you can do anything you want as far as laying something out with those snap features. So what I'll do now, so basically, okay, so my next step. So how do I find 0? Because, well, actually, I have already found 0. So this corner is my 0. That's why I've drawn out this distance and everything. That's why I drew all this out down here, because that tells me where my 0 is, and then I'm going to end up in the right spot for the start of the cut. This is all laid out, and that's all laid out according to that 0. All right. So now what I do is I never save it as an SVG because it just doesn't seem to work right. And let's see, actually what I'll do too, I always like to ungroup everything. I've grouped it just to move stuff around, but I like to ungroup it when I save it, just because there can be issues with that. And so, let me, whoops, yep, it'd be hard to do that with one hand. Give me just a second. All right. So, you always want to hit, let's see, I gotta get this right. I can never remember which one it is. I think that's right. I think that's object path is correct. And so, now I want to save as. And yeah, I just drop down and use this built-in DXF. I know there's add-ons that I've used, but this works fine. It works totally fine for me. So I've already got a big thing here, coaster deal. Let's see. I'm just going to call this current. Okay, save. You want to make sure this is in inches. It'll get you if you don't get it changed. You have to match that in EstlCam when you pull it in. Alright. Sorry guys, I could have got a screen recording, but honestly this is just a lot easier. And okay, I like to click on that first tool that I'm going to use, because what'll happen is I'll start doing something and not have the right tool chosen. So open, current, open. Make sure you pull it in as the measurement, that unit measurement that I just showed you. I put it in inches, so I have to pull it in inches. Alright, well, you can see I got some lines I didn't get deleted, but we don't care too much about that. But you can see that put my 0 right there, and everything matches up to my drawing. And let's see here. So what I'm going to do first is take this right here, and it looks like I'm going to have to manually select it just because I didn't really spend time lining up those squares perfectly. So I'll just go here, 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 and nope, not what I want. Zoom in. Yep. Oops. Okay. Yep, it took it. Alright, and that did it anyways. Okay, 3/4 router. And I'm just going to use a 3/4 router bit. And I'm going to choose pocket. And start level is 0, and I'm going to pocket out 30 thousandths. No holding tab, no finishing tool, no finishing allowance. And that's it for that. And I like to preview it. Okay, looks right. Don't think it's going to take out any of my clamps or anything. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and save this because I have to wait on EstlCam, and I am going to buy it because I am very sick of waiting on that timer. And I want to give the guy, you know, credit. So I'll be right back with you guys. Okay, I've got this ready. I didn't bore you guys with setting that Z up. I'm going to hit run. Of course, it's going to home like usual. Turn my spindle on now, it's going to get loud. See there that I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do. You can see it's just clearing the clamps. Looks like I'm moving through there a little too fast. I'm going to take the speed down a notch. I actually remember this from last time, but I had that a little fast. You can see that first cut is a full width cut of that bit. So every cut from then on won't be as, you know, it's only half the width of that bit. Set it at 45% step over, so not quite half. I'm just going to go ahead and let this go, and again, I'll be back with you guys soon. Thanks. Alright, this cut just got done, and as you can see, that 3/4 bit took care of that nicely. That 30 thousandths was just enough. Got kind of real light in some places and a little bit heavier in others. And you can see there's a pretty big discrepancy. You can see it's fairly prevalent in there, and then gone in there, really prevalent back in this area, and then just gone on the end. And that's how it is. And I promise you, if you don't do this and you're doing small engravings, especially letters, you're going to have trouble and you're not going to like it. So that's that. That was about a 20-minute cut, and that seems like a long time, but I'm not trying to set any records here. And this is a lot of area to cover. You know, it's 1/2 of that bit diameter at a time. Now, if you went with even smaller bit, takes even more time. For me, a lot of people won't use that big 3/4 router bit in this machine or in this setup or whatever, but for me it works great. And what I never do with that though is plunge. I never plunge with that thing because I've tried it and it doesn't work well at all. So stuff like this where it just comes into it real lightly and kind of starts off the edge and into it works great. So there's that. So we're going to continue on here and get the rest of this going. Alright, so I like to kind of just break up the cuts and not do them, not really do tool changes. I've done it, and I've even wrote up a little write-up on the forum about tool changes and stuff, and it works good, but I started doing this, as a lot of people do, and I just kind of like it doing it this way. It just breaks it up into different programs, and if there's any issues, it seems to be a little easier because you don't got all those tool changes in there and everything. So here's what's going to happen here. So now we've got that set. Nothing changes on in our cam. We just have to get this all these paths defined, or all these cuts defined. So basically, what we're going to have here is I'm going to go ahead and choose an end mill eighth up here. And so just for reference, on that 3/4 router bit, I have a 100 thousandths step cut, which might be a little heavy. 15 millimeters a second, which is a little heavy because I turned it down to about 75%. So put that at about 12, something like that is what I would recommend. So what I would recommend probably is about 50 thousandths cut. I don't know what this was from, but I'm going to go ahead and change it. So 50 thousandths depth of cut, about 12 millimeters a second, and that'll do you pretty good. And that's really all you need to know. 45% step over, of course. Okay, so back to this other deal. So end mill 8, this is my just every, all the time setting. 70 thousandths depth of cut, 12 millimeters a second. And happens to be similar to the other one. So, and I always do my Z at a slow rate because there's no point in speeding that up. Alright, so this needs to become a part, and that depth will be, actually, let's measure it. So, handy dandy caliper, and yes, it's a manual caliper. It's a good manual caliper though, and I actually really love it. It's one I got from my dad. I wouldn't trade it for any of those cheap digital ones, but anyways. Hard to do with one hand, of course. A little movement. About 200 thousandths there. I think that's the only place I can really check it, because you can see all these edges. Pretty sure. Excuse me. Now you guys can't see it, but I can kind of see it. I'm trying to get this straight. It's about 200 thousandths. So that's about what I wanted, luckily. And it was just going to be what it was going to be because that board was already cut. So that's going to be toolpath depth of, I always go like a good, oh man, I always go 2 point, like say, oh, let's see, that ain't right, 210, something like that, 210. I like to cut through, and then I may still have problems with this. Holding tabs. Again, this is super easy. Holding tab there. Holding tab there. 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 Alright, and so let's see here. Holding tabs. Finishing tool. I'm just going to set it. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to use a finishing tool on that. Be just fine. So there's that. I just try to make sure everything's right. Okay, I think we're good there. Alright. So, and I tell you what, I think, well, let's go ahead and finish this here. This will be an engraving here. And you can see this double line. That's because I think they call that a stroke. And that just has to do with how the image came out when I transferred it to Inkscape and converted it over to something I could use. And let's see here. I'm pretty sure I was using the outside. So engraving, got to go to 1/8 inch V-bit. My 1/8 inch V-bit, same settings, 70 thousandths depth of cut, 12 millimeters a second. On the line, okay, outside, and all on the toolpath depth. I'll just wait until it asks me in the end to set all these because it's too much of a pain to set them individually. Okay, so there's that. So basically, those are double lines. I just chose the outside one no matter where I was. And this here, I'm not going to put into this. It's too close and just causes issues, and it's not necessary. Okay, so now card feature, same bit. Click this. You can see that's outside carve. That's both. And go zoom in a little more. You get an inside carve, and that's what we want. And automatic depth limit. Leave the maximum carve width to the diameter of the bit. Now let's go. These are kind of a real pain. So I'm thinking, even though I drew all these out, and I'll still use my drawing as just to show me my placement, but I probably will end up copying these and doing multiple copies of this one instead of trying to define all these. I'm sorry, I got the camera out of view there. And if you don't know what the card feature is, it's a feature that probably gets used the most for this kind of stuff, like signs and stuff like that. So what the card feature is for, and like this is a really good example because these letters are tiny. And so the card feature can use a V-bit because the V-bit, if you think about it, at its very point, it cuts very lightly. If you think about it, if that very tip of the point is traveling in a straight line, it will cut a very faint straight line, right? And the deeper you plunge that V-bit, the wider that line will be at the top, and the bigger it'll look, right? So that's what's happening here. All these wide areas, it's cutting. Like, let's see, let's find a good example here. I think, well, any of these, like a Y. Let's just choose a Y here. And so, if you see this, what it will do is it'll start like in the middle, and it'll plunge down to that depth, which that depth is the maximum carve width, which is the diameter of that bit. So it stops at the end of its taper, basically. It will do that, and then as it comes around here, because that gets so small, and if you kept it at the same depth, you'd just lose all your detail. You couldn't get this. It'd just be another big fat line, right? So it plunges down at its full depth here, and then it pulls itself out as it travels that line, and that creates a thinner line. And that's what you see at the end of the points of all these letters. It will walk in and out, and that's how you get those defined letters. Here, I'll show you. Can you see how those letters are? They look just, someone that might not know how it works, they just look like carved letters. Well, every letter it walks in and out of every point as it comes in, and that's the only way it does. These, like the verse, the actual scripture part here is tiny. It's really tiny, and that's the only way to do it. You couldn't even, if you used a 16th inch bit here, no way. It wouldn't do you any good. It would just look like a big blob. So that's what that card feature is. I'm gonna finish this up here, and okay. I'll be right back. As you can see here, I've actually cheated, and how I drew out all of these. Well, I decided to end up because these letters take a long time to define, I decided to just tile them out and just set them the right distance apart. But having the drawing confirms my distances, confirms that everything's the same, is exactly how I want it to be. So I'm good with that. So what I like to do at this point is I like to go back and I like to click that. I want to make sure that that's the right tool that I've chosen, in mil/8, right depth. I look at everything again and everything looks good. And I want to check this one because I did these each the top and the bottom separately. So in mil/8, 210, everything looks good. So now this is one gripe that I have with the EstlCam. It's just sometimes the navigation. It's just really not very good. You know, I've got this now. I've got this. Okay, there we go. Okay, I didn't define the toolpath, but I just want to make sure that's the right bit. 1/8 inch V-bit. Yep, I'm good. Okay, and so I'm pretty confident that the rest of those are as well. So what I'd like to do at this point is I like to hit preview, and I've learned that a 45 thousandths engraving depth is the depth I want for this. So I hit OK, and that preview, you need to get in the habit of using this preview function because it'll just tell you some things about what's going to happen, and sometimes it's pretty important. Like the thing that I'm looking at the most is the order. So obviously, now I have done a tool change in this because basically I forgot to break it up and end up doing both the paths on there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the tool change. But see, you can tell what it's going to do first here, because otherwise you wouldn't know. So you can tell that it's going to engrave first, and you just want to make sure that like all the engravings are in line and together, and they don't get busted apart somehow, like where you have to change the tool, twice when you only should have to change it. Do one tool change. But again, that's another advantage about just separating these programs out, because you don't have to worry about stuff like that. And orders and stuff. So if you look, everything's in line, everything's good. Engraving first, which is what you want, because if you think about it, if you're engraving, it's better to engrave as one solid piece of wood before you do the cutout feature and just leave the tiny little tabs holding. Now that reminds me, there's one more thing I do want to check. Now here, what I have done, now you see what I did here? See this holding tabs? I didn't set the holding tab length and height to what I normally use. So what's going to have to end up happening is, see, that's what I hate about the tile feature too. This is another gripe I have with the EstlCam, and I just don't understand it really. I mean, you tile it out, but it's tiled, and sometimes it doesn't seem to be consistent. But you know, this over here, the original ones, like this one and this one, oops, these two, everything's separate. When you tile them out, it just becomes grouped, and you can't do anything with it. So I've screwed this up, right? So I've screwed up my tab height and length and height, and so now I've got all these tiled out, and I'm gonna have to go through. I'm just gonna have to go through and delete them in order to get that right. Now that's one thing I really don't like. And tell you what, another thing I really don't like is there's no undo button. I don't understand. I mean, there's no undo function at all. Otherwise, there might be one that I don't know of, but I really don't understand that. I mean, I know you can just go select and delete whatever you just did, but still, you know, I mean, I think everybody is just so used to an undo function, and it's just kind of, you know, something you're just so used to and you need and you feel like really you rely upon. So I really think it should have that added. Now I always do an 1/8 inch length and 1/8 inch height on my holding tabs. Seems to work good. And so I'm gonna do the same thing here. And let me tell you, it's easy. It's easy to forget something. I mean, every single time I forget something. And so just, I mean, don't beat yourself up for that, because trust me, It happens to everyone, even the guys doing the big time CNC stuff. I'll watch some guys online, and you know, they make mistakes. We're human, and it's easy to tell this thing to do something wrong. And so let's see here. So now we're good there, and we're good there. Everything's set now. So I guess you guys will get to see the tile function. So I drag and drop, tile out. I just want them on X, and I know already that they need to be 6 and 7/8, which is 6.875. Which you have to click. And there's another thing. This is the navigation stuff I'm talking about. You have to click out here to kind of set that, and then hit confirm. If you don't click out there, hit confirm first, sometimes it doesn't. It keeps them where they are without adjusting the distance apart. If you just click like in the white space and then you click select or whatever up here, you won't get it. You got to click confirm. So they're just a couple little navigation things that I just don't see, just like that. I wish that after you did a tile function, it would go back to select. You know, after you tiled and you hit confirm, boom, then you just go back to select feature, because that happens to me every time, and I'm sure it happens to other people. Okay, so again, 3 times 6.875. Okay, confirm. All right. So let's double check it again with the preview. Now preview can be kind of slow, so just bear with it. Still waiting. There we go. Okay, again, just want to make sure everything's in line and together and everything looks good. Starting with a V-bit, which is what we want. Alright, so I think, you know, you see how these intersect there? We're good with that. We don't care about that. That's just fine. So I want to, I'll go over here and pull my card. Okay, I'll save that, and I will save that. I'll just save it as current again, because that's just the current one I'm using, or current lantern, I should say. Save, and yes, I want to replace it. I try to replace stuff if I don't intend on using it again. And oftentimes, like with stuff like this, special setup, you can't really use it again. So, you know, I mean, I save a lot, but there's like in this case, I just overwrite that original file over and over again. So anyways, you've seen there, also wanted to mention that depth. You've seen that depth came up. And as I said already, the 0.045 seems to be a good engraving depth for me. So, alright, I'll let this run and I'll get back with you guys. As you can see here, I've started this engraving cut. I'm going to see if I can get in there and see if I can show kind of what it does. Now you see those fuzzies on there, but can you see how that bit moves up and down in Z height? And that's how you get that those fine points and that defined, very small text. So this is a pretty slow process because it's a lot of letters, a lot of movement. So it takes some time. So I'm just going to let it run. And alright guys, as you can see, the carving just got finished. As I said, I'm getting ready to do a tool change right now. This is still part of the same program. And the way I've got my tool changes set, I disable everything. So I have these end stops in this home position. I can do that. So basically what I do, just disable it. I can move this over to wherever I want to change the bit. I'll change the bit out to 1/8 inch end mill. And I'll just set the Z to just like I did originally, and I know that's all at that consistent plane, so there's no worries there. Let it home, and then it'll go back and cut all these out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. All right, guys, just finish this cut up. As you can see, everything turned out really nice. The thing to note about all this is that I spent some time originally from the beginning laying out these cuts. making sure that I could hold my work down efficiently with these screws. That's the best way. I mean, that is the best way if you can do that. But you have to know your layout. You have to measure everything out. That takes a little bit of time, but it's worth it in the end. And as you can see, I knew that everything was shifted towards the top a little. Had a little gap at the bottom. I seen that in the drawing. Was okay with that. I had these intersections. I knew I was okay with that. I don't care about that. But it goes to show that you can trust your drawing, and that's something really important. The thing is, whatever you tell these machines to do, they'll usually do. And if there's an error, it's usually your fault. And so, I guess the tips that I would leave with you guys is if you're going to do something with intricate letters, engravings that are really depth dependent, make sure you hold your work down extremely well. Make sure you do a leveling pass to get that all at the same plane. And make sure you lay out everything and you measure your offset from your 0 point and all that, and get it all, get it all set. The preparation is worth a lot. So, anyways, another tip is you can see these clamps here have taken a bit of a beating over the course of time that I've had this machine, and that's from basically running the router into the clamps. And that happens when, from a home position, it takes the shortest path and it goes diagonally across the piece. And sometimes it'll catch a clamp. And same thing coming back the other direction. And so, but the great thing is these are 3D printed, and you can route through them, and it doesn't hurt anything. It can route right through them. The infill's not real heavy, and imagine if you had a aluminum clamp or steel clamp or any kind of clamp, or even a hardwood clamp or something like that. It'd be a lot more devastating to hit them when you hit them. And the cool thing about these is, I can just print another batch just easy. So, and I use these step blocks with them, these printed step blocks. And I'm telling you, these things are extremely robust. You can crank these things down like crazy. And this is a clamp that I found on Thingiverse, but I modified this inside slot to accept a 1/4 inch bolt originally for these inserts, but basically I never use those. I just use screws. So anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. I'll catch you next time. Thanks.